Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast, the podcast designed to be your companion in the journey of self-discovery. I'm Barbara Thompson, your host and a dedicated therapist. I'm the founder and owner of Self-Care Studio, a private counselling practice. With my clients and courses that I create on this podcast, I'm committed to ensuring that you have the support that you need. I created this podcast as a space for you to feel a sense of connection and a reminder that you're not alone in this thing that we call life, this adventure. This podcast is your weekly reminder to trust yourself, live life authentically, and embrace the path that is uniquely yours. Together, we'll explore ways to break free from people-pleasing, overthinking, allowing you to claim your time. You'll be joined by myself as I take you through some episodes, or during the year, I'll have some special self-care experts as guests on my podcast. So if you're ready to step into a life that's truly for you, join me on this journey. Let's navigate the twists and turns of life together, and more importantly, live your life for you. So thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me today. Let the studio chat begin. Are you struggling with hormonal imbalances, or are you looking to enhance your menstrual health naturally? I may have something for you. Introducing seed cycling, a scientifically backed naturopathic protocol designed to balance your hormones and support your overall menstrual wellness. Do you suffer from heavy periods that are longer than 7 days, painful periods, or you may have an irregular cycle over 37 days? Does your mood suffer every month? Do you have PMS? Do you feel bloated all the time? Is your sleep terrible? Do you have adult acne? Trouble getting pregnant? Do you experience anxiety or depression, fatigue or exhaustion, or is your hair thinning or is your hair falling out? These are all signals from the body that your hormones need to be addressed. Seed Cycle Blend is designed to optimize your hormone levels naturally, promoting healthier cycles and happier ovaries. It's clinically proven to help manage the conditions like PCOS and supports a healthy gut microbiome without any of those side effects. Seed cycling involves rotating specific organic seeds throughout different phases of your menstrual cycle. What you do is you add 2 tablespoons daily of either of the blends, depending on where you are in your cycle or the moon phase. Mix in with some mixed yogurt on top of your eggs, blended with some smashed avo or in your smoothie. And once you do that consistently, you'll be ready to take charge of your hormonal health, and I know that it's going to make a difference. So head over on Instagram, Seed Cycle Blend, and I've actually got a discount code for you guys. If you type in self-care seeds into the checkout, you will get a discount. And there's actually a really cool function that you can have a subscription service. You can cancel at any time, but it can make sure that these 2 different blends, the follicular phase blend and the luteal phase blend, are delivered to your door every month. And there's actually a 90-day money-back guarantee as well. So give them a go. Seed Cycle Blend. Hello, everyone. It's another episode of the Studio Chat podcast. So nice to have you here. And I think I always say that on every episode, but I really genuinely love doing this podcast. It's out of just a love of connecting with people all around the world, meeting people, giving people the tools that, they may not be able to afford therapy, or they may not be interested in therapy, and they're thinking, how can I better myself? How can I learn about myself? They may be, you may be listening to this going through a tough time at the moment, or you may be like me, who's on this constant learning journey. I'm always got a nose in a book or doing a course, or I'm just curious about human behavior and how to, take care of myself. That's why I'm a therapist. And today I'm so excited because we're over in Dallas, Texas right now. So I'm just kind of visualizing what that would be like and feel like, because it's summer over there. And I'm speaking to a professional therapist. She's a board certified faith-based counselor. Her name is Kimberly Christian. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries, which I know you probably clicked on this episode because it says boundaries. So I know a lot of us are aware of what they are, but we don't know how to put them in. And then we feel bad when we do. And then also we're going to wrap up the episode talking a little bit about parenting. So I'd love to extend a warm welcome to you, Kimberly, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Barbara. I am thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled because, you and I can I think, talk all day about all things therapy and
Yes.
theory-based. So as a therapist and doing what you do now, especially like a faith-based counselor, and you're a speaker as well, what got you to what you're doing today? Have you always been interested in this line of work?
No, I haven't actually. For a long time when I was really small, I thought I would be a teacher. I just thought that was just what little girls did. And no one told me that message. I just kind of made an assumption and I just kind of followed this particular path of, I'm an oldest child and was very responsible and always wanted to do the right things and being a good student. And it really wasn't until after I got my bachelor's degree in human development and family studies, because just like you said, I have been very interested in why people do what they do, but I didn't realize that I was. It was just very natural that I let a couple of years go by after graduating and realized that the corporate world was just not for me. I did not feel satisfied at all. I kept thinking, this is not getting it done. Whatever that was, I don't know, but I just felt like there's got to be something more that I need to be doing. And so I just ended up at a job that I would honestly never have taken. It was at a children's emergency room in Dallas. Very, very hard job. But it was in that job that I realized as I was watching all of these medical professionals doing things, and I knew by ruling things out, I did not want to be a doctor, did not want to be a nurse. I could not handle physical things like that. But I was watching that they had a social worker and I was watching what she was doing and what her role was with these families. And I was just becoming so intrigued. Like, oh my gosh, you mean somebody actually has a job where they're like there to help people? Like that, they're calling her in to love on people and to encourage them and to give them resources. And I was just like sold. I'm like, whatever it is that she's doing, I think that's what I need to do. And so I just changed the plan, went back to school, decided I was going to pursue a master's in social work, and here I am.
Wow, what a beautiful insight for you to be seeing people on their darkest days, really, when they're at hospital, at a children's hospital. It's
Yes.
amazing that you got that insight to see people. Yeah, it just really shows because it's not for everyone. One of the most common questions I get as a therapist is, oh my gosh, how do you deal with that? Or how do you take on people's pain or whatever? And you don't.
Yes.
Like, you learn the tools and you learn to, again, that's boundaries as well. You learn to be separate from that. But it takes a special someone to do what you do. It really, really does, to be able to want to do it and hold that space for someone. So, yeah, what's it like, obviously, on your side of the world, being a therapist? What's some common things that you see? We're going to start talking about boundaries. So what's some common things that people will come to you, and it's around boundaries?
Oh, what brings them in and it's around boundaries.
Mm.
Well, at the lack of saying everything, I mean, honestly, things always seem to get traced back to boundaries. But I mean, I know you'll agree with this. Number one, people never come to see us because everything's great. They're
Yeah.
never coming to see us outside of an emergency. It's not like, oh, I've got nothing to do on a Tuesday at 3, so I thought I would just schedule, a quick therapy sesh, right? They're not thinking that. It's like they come to us in a total mess. And we are trained, thank God, to know how to put the pieces together and kind of figure out, okay, how do we get them through session 1 with a little bit of hope in their pocket, right?
Mm.
And so we don't always know on session 1 or 2 or 5 exactly what's going on. I mean, we're good, but I don't think no one's that good that they can just say, oh, I have your whole life wrapped up in the palm of my hands after 5 sessions. No, but we usually have a pretty good idea, because I'll say for me, I think I'm really good at listening. I've become really good at listening over the years, for sure, that I listen to how people talk. I listen to the words they're using. I'm looking for patterns and I'm thinking, okay, does this sound like something I've seen before? Have I ever dealt with this? Is this even in my scope? Right? Like that's one of the first things we have to know is, can I treat this? They may like me, they may want to come back and see me, but am I going to be good at that?
Mm.
So most people do not know. My point in saying that, Barbara, is that most people really don't know what they're coming in for, but they think they do. They're coming in because, maybe they got feedback from someone else that said, you need some help, or, this relationship is about to go down the toilet if you don't get some help. Or I don't like this about you. You need to go do something about that. But a lot of times the thing that they're seeking isn't really the thing. It's something so much deeper. It's something so much more surprising to them. And
Yeah.
so that takes a real finesse to be able to not minimize what they're saying, that, oh, no, that's not it. But to realize, okay, yes, we're going to talk about that and we're going to address that. But what I'm also hearing is you've handled a lot of your relationships in this same way. What do you think that could be about? Right? Getting to be a curious person. I love that about our job, that we can be really curious without acting like we have it all figured out and saying, what I'm noticing is this. You talk about your mom and you use this particular phrase or word. And when you talk about your spouse, you say that too. It seems as though you think a lot of people are against you. You think a lot of people are the reason for these things in your life.
Mm.
And you're giving them that chance to either say, well, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. Or, well, what do you mean? Is that wrong? It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
It's
we've
it's
got some
even
work to do.
you've brought out a couple of really important points, which I actually want to talk about before we kind of talk about boundaries. But
Sure.
one of the things was, yes, I experienced that too. When people come and sit in the chair or it's online, what they're coming to see me for isn't the thing. But what I find is even reflecting back to someone, in the heat of the moment is going to be talking about their partner or their mum or their boss or their neighbor and
Yes.
all the words they're saying. Sometimes people will repeat a certain phrase 3 times and they don't even know
Yes.
what they're saying. And then I'll say, did you realize that you said that you have to and should and must do this? And I said, you said that 3 times in a row. And they go,
What?
did I say that? And did I say that 3 times? Because we're on automatic pilot. It's how we've got one story and we tell that story to that person, then we tell the same story to that person. And then by the time they come to therapy, they've told this story and this way for so many times that when they come to us, it's just so automatic. So by us
Yes.
being able to say, hey, I just recognize that you literally repeating back what they said, and they go, that's what I find for my beginning point. People go, oh my God, I don't even know. And I'm like, yeah. So that's kind of the first step. The second thing I wanted to highlight too was the really important kind of good bomb that you dropped in the beginning part of this episode, talking about therapy, that it's only mainly people come to see us when the same thing keeps happening over and over again and they hit a crisis point where that's when they book the appointment. I can't handle this anymore. I'm going to find someone, book. And
Yes.
then obviously the dread of, I probably don't, because these come in waves. So anyone listening to this, it's very normal that if you are looking at speaking to someone, the thing will happen again and again. And when it happens and you've had enough, that will give you enough push to be like, okay, I need to find someone or I need to talk to someone. And if you go further and book the appointment, it's very normal a day before or the morning of, I don't need this anymore. I'm okay.
Yep. Yep. Things are
That's your
better.
brain, that's your fear brain trying to talk you out of it. That's all normal. I want you to push through
Yes.
this and keep going, because therapy isn't just about, so people come when it's the crisis point, people come when they're burnt out or they just can't do it anymore for whatever reason. But then when
Mhm.
you've worked through that and you've got the tools, have you ever thought to keep going, to work on like the tools when you're happy and when you're in a good place and when everything's working out for you? Like, how would that look? How would that look, having someone in your life that isn't attached to you, doesn't have a hidden agenda? You can have a conversation about, oh, look, I was thinking about buying this property, or hey, I was thinking of going for a girls' weekend, and having someone that is non-biased that you can kind of have an hour to yourself. I mean, how often do you have time without getting interrupted by the children, getting interrupted by the messages on your phone, or the constant to do. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. It's like it's someone's superpower, I think. Yes, I am a therapist. Yes. But I don't just say this because of what I do. I genuinely believe that this stuff, having a support person can absolutely, it did to my life, like 360 your life, and you can use it for good too. You can learn more about yourself.
Right. It is what I tell people is that it is different than any relationship you are ever going to have.
I hope
Because
so.
it's truly right. It's truly the only selfish relationship that you're going to have that's going to last or that could last. Right? Because this person, and you just said this, Barbara, that person is there for you. You know, we have exchanges all the time with friends and relatives and coworkers and all that, but we're always sort of on and we're thinking about the give and take of the relationship because that's all human and it's very appropriate. But in therapy, and I have to remind people of this, as I'm sure you do too, even, you know, maybe even years into our time together, that they don't have to worry about me. They don't have to think about what I'm thinking. They don't have to adjust things, you know, for my liking. It really is, this is your time. And I want you to show up and to get your needs met. And you let me be the time manager. You let me be the person that is sort of taking care of all of that stuff that you usually take care of so that you can just like be. You can work through ideas and you can talk through things and that it's safe because they know I'm absolutely for you and not every person in your life truly is. It's sad, but it really is true. They're not always going to be for you. They're going to have something that they are trying to extract for themselves.
Mm. But not only that, when you think about any relationship that we have with anybody, when they give us advice or they give their opinion or they give anything, it's coming from their view. It's not your view. So even though they have the best intentions and they love you very much, and that could be 100%, I mean, I know in my experience, it'd be interesting to see what you think. Most people do not have your best interests. There's so many people that will sit in front of me and say, oh my God, Barbara, this person's nice. They did X, Y, Z. I look at them and go, that's a toxic trait. That's not okay. Oh, isn't it? So we're surrounded by a lot, and that was me too. You're surrounded by people because you're a nice person. So you reflect that back and you think everyone's a nice person. And it's just being wary and just knowing that when people share things with you, remember that's only, and it can come from a very good place. That's their view, their glasses, so you and I could look at a painting right now, the same painting, and I could say to you, oh my God, that's such a beautiful view of the beach. And you can go, that's no beach, that's a hillside, that's a mountain. Like all have a different view, which is healthy. But when we're working on ourselves, like you are right, it's important to be all of self.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And what makes that different in therapy is, you know, we have our own view too. But the word that you use that separates that is it's an unbiased opinion.
Mm.
And so, yes, we're going to give an opinion that is our view. And we're not even saying that it's the right view or it's the perfect view every time, because it certainly isn't. But when a patient is talking about themselves in the system of their family or their coworkers or whomever it is, we don't know any of those people. Or maybe we've met them a time or two, because I invite family members into therapy for sure, but I don't know them like I do my patient. And so I am able to really hear with clarity that the other people just can't offer. Like you said, it's not that they don't have good intentions or anything like that, but they're a part of it. And then we're able to kind of stand back several feet and say, oh, well, have you thought about this? Because it sounds like this person is playing this role and you're playing this role. And they might be, you know, they might be addressing it this way because of this, because this is how they're trying to get their needs met. And sort of like normalizing why those things are happening, but helping them to see sometimes a very, very different view that no one else is capable of giving them. And I find that such an honor.
Okay. Yeah. It's so cool when you look at someone and you can see the clogs, like the things turning in their head, and then they like have that epiphany or that moment where they go, whoa, okay. It's a privilege.
It's awesome.
The privilege
It
to
is.
do what we do. But I really think this is really important. Anyone listening to this, I understand it's scary. And I understand it may take you a while to find a therapist that you feel comfortable and that you like. You've got to like them. You have to like them. You have to feel
Yes.
connected to them. Feeling safe and comfortable comes in time. But if you walk out of that office or that room and go, ugh, I want you to trust that. And I want you to
Yes.
keep looking for someone, because unfortunately, like any industry, there's good ones that have intentions, ones that are in the job for power, and it's like any profession.
It
Any
is.
profession you look at, there's the good, the bad, the ugly. And there's therapy, there's always a power imbalance. So you always got to make sure that you pick someone, and it may take you first go. Sometimes word of mouth is always helpful. I find that if you know someone that's been through therapy of a similar thing and you can actually talk to them, how do you feel? What's their approach? I quite like that too, because you can read
Mhm.
an internet bio, you can read something, but I think if you know someone that's been there too, as long as it's not too close to the relationship, that works too. But it's not I think when I'm trying to market what I do or trying to talk to new clients, it's so hard from our point of view to say, I know a lot of people at the end of their first session will say, I wish I did it sooner, or that wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. Do you get the same kind of feedback?
Oh, so often. So often. Yeah, but you know what? That is still really, really a teachable moment. Maybe not in that session, but later on, to just remind them of how in a new situation, because that's where we catch a lot of our automatic thoughts is in new situations. If they're inclined to say, "Oh, I should have done this earlier." Barbara, I file that away. I'm like, I need to remember this because they're shoulding. And this is an automatic response for them instead of, "Oh, thank God that I found this person right now. This is so hopeful. This is going to be amazing." It's, "Why didn't I do this earlier? I can't believe I didn't do this. I've been in pain for a long time." And so they're judging themselves already kind of out of the gate. And it's not the time, to correct that, but I just want to pay attention and kind of create this file of, we need to look back at that thinking, because that's not in your best interest. There's a different way to see that that's going to help you realize, I didn't know what I didn't know. I
Mhm.
wasn't in this kind of situation, and maybe this therapist wasn't even in practice, and this is the perfect time. Yeah, so what you were saying before about just this being such a privilege and such an honor, I could not agree more. And what I've told people before, in line with exactly what you were saying, is please, please take that decision so seriously, because you truly only have like two professionals really that are like in charge of your mental health. Two, if you're lucky, like if you've chosen to have a therapist and a psychiatrist, someone's managing your medication. Those are the two people that are helping steer your decisions about really important things. You're not sharing it with hundreds of people. You're not sharing it with the community.
Mm.
And so we see that person often. We get to know them really, really well. And just like you said, if you don't have a good feeling about it, or if something is coming across in a way of like, I don't think I'm going to be able to feel safe saying my stuff because I picked up on this about them, listen to that,
Mm.
because there's plenty of other people that you can find, but
That's
don't give up.
that's right. And also I feel like a lot of people, feedback I've got, when I have clients with me, they have probably, on the odd occasion, I'll get one that's a newbie and fresh.
Mhm.
And when I talk about privacy and I talk about confidentiality and stuff, they're like, well, this is interesting. I have to do the same with clients that maybe have seen 3 or 4 before they meet me. Oh, I've never had this discussion before.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay. And then they will share, okay, well, why did you want to come and see me today? Give me a bit of a background. Even though they do on their client forms, I get them to repeat it when they're in front of me. And a lot of the time they'll say, I went and saw someone, I didn't connect with them, but they told me to do sell my house, move out of my parents' house, break up with and I'm sorry. And I actually always repeat it like 3 times. Sorry, to be clear. The therapist that you were seeing told you. Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, that's not normal, right? And they're like, huh? And I'm like, as my job, like as my job as a therapist, unless I mean, there's a couple of occasions when we can tell people what to do, and that's when they're in dire crisis and maybe want to take their life, or like
there's certain situations, but generally, where I'm not allowed to tell people what to do. That's my qualification. Like, who am I to be able to say to someone, oh, leave that boyfriend, do this, get a new job? And these are big life decisions. And then when I say to them, no, that's not okay, they can guide you and very clearly, like, but they can't tell you what to do. And they're like, oh, well, that might be why I left the session crying. I've had people come and see me that they've been to a therapist and the therapist has made them cry. And then they go back and I'm like, oh no, like, yes, you may cry in a session because we're talking about stuff, or you may be sharing stuff with someone you've never actually said out loud, and crying is okay. It's good. I've got you. But to hear that there's some people that are brave enough to go and see a therapist, and then I'm hearing that they feel very judged. I've been to a therapist before. A few years, many years ago when I had therapy, and the lady sat on, and I share this on my podcast often to normalize it. It was a big room, and she sat in the corner of one room and I was in the corner of the other. It was pretty an empty room, quite clinical. And she sat there with her glasses on the end of her nose. She was dressed like she was in a Vogue magazine. So very beautifully dressed, and like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that power imbalance was already strong. And I sat in front of her and she looked down at me and was like, I'm high and mighty. And everything I shared with her, she just made me feel like a piece of poo. And I had the ability to be like, I think I went 3 times. And in the end, I was like, okay, that's not for me. So I've actually been in a situation where I've seen someone and told her some pretty big stuff, and she wasn't listening to me. She actually, I said, like, at one point, my life is in danger. You need to listen to what I'm sharing with you. And all she was interested was like mandatory reporting or this and this. I'm like, you're actually not hearing what I'm saying, and would just judge me. And it was a very difficult time in my life. And that therapist was absolutely horrible. Now looking back, I'm going to say it. She had no warm skills, no people skills, nothing. She was a psychologist, and they operate differently. One of the reasons why I'm a counselor and not a psychologist, and there's no good or bad here, but I've got more scope to be able to put more of myself into what I do, and I've got more flexibility to be able to help someone. I can go out of the lines, like still ethically be in the lines, if you know what I mean, but I can kind of make it my own. And that's why I am a counselor, and I'm very proud of that. But that experience that I had of a psychologist was just, if anyone else had that experience, I don't think anyone would ever go back. It was absolutely horrible and made me feel worse.
Right. Well, that's a sign right there. That's what I hear probably more often than that is when a patient has seen, 2 or 3 or 4 therapists before, and they end up seeing me, and we start going through the intake, like you said, and we're talking about all of that so I can learn from them. And one of my questions that I like to ask is, have you tried therapy before? What was that experience like? And I'll tell them the reason why I want to know is I want to know, like, what worked for you and what didn't. It helps me to know if I'm going to be a really good fit for you, because that's my job to tell you. And sometimes they'll say, well, I stopped going because I learned more about her and her family than I ever got any help. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm trying to keep my face very composed, but inside I'm just like, what?
I know.
Like, you learned more about her. And they're telling me, oh yeah, I know all of her kids and her grandkids and where they went on vacation. And I am just cringing. Like, and like you said, I'm like, okay, well, so I need to tell you that's not normal. That's not the experience that you need to have. And I can promise you, see, that's why I asked that question. I'm glad you're telling me, because I can tell you that's not how this is going to work. I will share things about my life when it's appropriate, but this is your show. Like, this is about you. And if I have issues, it's up to me to go see a therapist.
Yep.
And that's my duty.
Isn't that interesting? Because then there's people too that I hear this often. Actually, probably one of the most things I hear the most is when they've seen 2 or 3 therapists and they come and see me. And I'm not perfect either. So let's just put that out there. Like, we all have different styles. whatever. I'm not trying to be the best or anything, but what I am confident in saying is I give people tools that they can use for the rest of their life. I give them strategies. We have homework. A lot of people will say, oh, I just go and talk. And then on the hour they go, okay, time's up. When do you want to book for next week? And they say, all I do, Barbara, is I feel like I sit in front of someone, blah, 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 and then they'll go, time's up. So for me, a lot of the time, my sessions go over an hour a little bit. And I have my clients going, oh, we've gone over. And I said, I'm the boss in here. It's okay. I'm the time manager. Because most of the time, 45 minutes is when we crack open a real goodie. It takes about 40 minutes in a session to then go, oh, this is actually why I'm here today, or this really big thing happened this week. So I'm not going to, at 60 minutes, when I look at my phone or my watch and go, yeah, it's time. Sometimes if I can, great, close it up, put a bow on it, but life doesn't work that way. So sometimes if I've got someone that's really distraught in front of me, and I know they're going to have to drive for half an hour, my duty of care is I'm not going to go, oh, time's up.
While you're crying, go ahead and drive down the highway, but, have some Kleenex with you. Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
So, and that's interesting because people look at me and go, oh, but it's time. I'm like, no. And you see their shoulders drop and they go, I said, no, I'm the timekeeper. I said, do you have another 5 minutes? And they go, yeah. And I go, great, let's keep going. And it's just those things that people say, I went, I said my thing, and then I just feel like all I'm doing is talking, and they're saying time's up. And I said, to be honest, the first at least 2 sessions are a little bit like that. Because we've got to get to know you. We've got to know your story. We've got to ask you quite a few questions. And then session 1, you'll have a plan. Like you'll actually know what we want to try and do. How does that sound? Session 2 will be a bit of a recap, and we still work on that plan. By about session 3, I think that's when, and it depends. Everyone's in a different place. Some people love extra homework. Some people are like, oh, give me books to read. Some people are like, I don't want homework. I want to come here and do the work when I'm with you, and then when I'm out, I'm out. So, you've got to find that person's style.
Right. Yeah. Very, very much alike.
Isn't it interesting that how many, we're not neighbors, are we? We live across the world from each other.
The world. I know, but that's how I handle it too. I want people to know. I mean, there's that common phrase of they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that kind of talks to that power struggle that you're talking about. I want them to know that they can trust me, but they first have to understand, I care about you. You matter to me. Whether I see you once or I've seen you, 1,000 times, you matter to me because you're a human and you have needs. And I'd like to think I could help you. Even if I can't help you in the scope of my exact practice, I'm going to help you by getting you safely to somebody else. I'm going to work with you until you get to somebody else. So I'll give you as many referrals as it takes for you to not feel like you're just doing this all by yourself all over again. And people respond so much better to that, right? When they know that they really are in good hands. But what you were saying before is also really pointing to boundaries too. Like that's your boundary to say, I'm the timekeeper. I'm watching it. I'm going to give us a couple of extra minutes because we need that today. We may not do this every time, but we need this today.
Correct. And I just want anyone listening to this, whether you're a newbie in therapy or you're in it now, or maybe one day you will be in it, hear the commonality. Like we're at different cultures. We live in different countries, Texas, I'm in Australia, we're same, but different. But look, you and I are talking about the same stuff here. Can we just take a moment to be like, what you're dealing with right now? And if you feel so alone, I want to say that you're not alone, because Kimberly and I are talking about this stuff and we're going through the same thing. And as a therapist, the hardest thing I find really, and that's something that I work through on a daily basis, is when I can see someone that's about to have a breakthrough or someone that will only come in their hard times. I'm like, if you're consistent, you're not going to be in this. When you're consistent, you can actually break through and this won't happen again. But there's some people that will come for a session and then I don't see them in a month or every 2, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's that fear base, and I understand where that comes from.
Yeah, I love that you're sharing with people that how human we are.
Yes.
And that we really do see, we really understand. We have a lot of compassion. You're not sharing your personal stories with seeing this therapist with every patient that you're seeing, but I know that it comes through in how you're dealing with people, because you're not wanting to be seen as the psychologist in the back of the room with the glasses on the end of your nose. Like, you're not wanting to come across that way, and you remember what that felt like. So you're probably working overly hard to really say, you know what, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud that you even came in today. Like, you had a choice. You could have canceled, you could have no showed. People do that all the time, but the fact that you're here, this is a win. And I think people need to know that on day one. They just need to know, okay, because I look at it like my job, literally my job is a hope giver. If I could just really like numb it down to just a few words, my job is to give people hope. Now, I am really big on skills, Barbara, just like you. I'm known for that amongst my peers and other patients. Like, oh, if you're going to work with Kimberly, she's going to work you, because I'm just about the skills. I want them to not need me someday. So they have got to learn all of these things that I'm imparting to them, because I tell them, this is not coffee talk. You can do this at Starbucks. I don't know if you guys have Starbucks in Australia, but like a coffee place. I said, you have friends you can meet up at Starbucks at 6 o'clock tonight if you want. But what we do is different. And we're going to work. I'm going to get you to a better place before you leave here, so that you're not a mess driving down the road, that you're really thinking, I can't wait to work on this. And I can't wait to get back to the next session and tell her the things that I've been thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find, I'm just going to geek out as a therapist for a minute to another therapist.
Yeah.
What blows my mind sometimes is when I have someone sitting in front of me and they're so excited and so proud, and I look at them and they're like, Barbara, you're going to be so proud of me. You know that thing that you said last time? And I'm like, no, like I've got my notes, but I'm like, oh God, what did I say? And they'll say something. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And I think in my head, did that come from me? Wow, I've been having a good day. Have you ever had those moments where
yes,
a patient sits in front of you and they're so excited, and they will show you their text messages or show you the email, and they'll give you the phone, and like they're like, oh my God, look, this is what I did. Like the thing I couldn't do, or they applied for the job they always wanted, or they got the job they always wanted, or whatever it was. And they've done the work and they did the homework, and they're so excited. They're like, oh my God, Barbara, look, or Kimberly, look. And they're like, the thing that you told me, and they rattle on the thing. And I'm like inside, internally, my brain's going, good job, Barbs. Did you say that?
Yes.
Wow, where did that nugget come from?
I know. Absolutely. I've had that happen on many occasions. And what is so funny is that sometimes the thing that, like, after the session, I'm thinking to because patients probably don't realize that after we end a session, sometimes we're like, dang, that was good.
Yeah.
Or we're like, what? I was just, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I totally flopped, right? We're thinking those things to ourselves. But the times that I'm like, man, that was such an amazing nugget. Like I could just feel that like reverberating in the atmosphere. And then they come back, and the one thing they remembered is the one thing that I thought was so dumb.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, that was so powerful. And I'm going, really? That was so powerful? Okay. Well, I'm so glad.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
Not feel that great.
It doesn't work how we think it does. The things that we say sometimes when the client leaves, and I go, sometimes because we're human, I go, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? Or I could have done this better, because we're always reflecting on, the session of what we could have done better, what went well, what didn't go well. And sometimes I think, especially with new clients, I'm like, oh, they're not coming back. Wow. And then they do. And I'm like, wow.
Yes.
And again, it's not about me, but it's really interesting to see our human behavior is, I flopped. That was not some sessions flow and some just don't.
Right.
And sometimes they'll leave and I'll be like, no, I get it wrong most of the time. And then they're back in the next week and they're so excited. I'm like, oh, but yeah, it's such an interesting thing. So,
but that's what makes me so grateful, because the good or the bad or whatever we think, a lot of times the people that we are supposed to be working with, they're getting what they need. And if it doesn't work out that way, sometimes we do get those examples to be able to say, when they're in a real, like maybe a shame spiral, we're able to say something like, do you know that there are times that I question what I say in my job? Like, I don't think that every single thing that I'm saying is helpful. I question it, but you know what I do that's different? is if I hear myself starting to go down this judgy road, I'll stop and say, you know what? You can do that different next time. You get another opportunity. There's nothing that you did in that session that is going to bring harm to another person's life, right? It's not that kind of crisis work. And we're able to like give an example of good self-talk where we catch ourselves in something and say, okay, I did it. That's what I'm always trying to tell other people. But instead I'm going to say, you know what? You did some really great things. And I bet they got what they needed. But if you need to bring up something, bring it up next time. There's only so much you can do in 55 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, it's so interesting because most people we see, I think people, the troubles they have or the feelings they have, a lack of self-belief, self-esteem, self-worth,
Yes.
self-love. And from that, I think the next level up is this thing called boundaries. And people, I think it's more now in the media when we talk about narcissists and we talk about other things of putting boundaries in place. But I don't think people understand a boundary could just be, I don't want to go to this barbecue. No. What? And not giving a reason. Just, you have those days, anyone listening to this, it's just like, I don't want to deal with people today. I actually don't want to go out. My tank is like empty.
Yes.
When you say the should or must or have to is like, oh no, I went to they came to my barbecue last time. It's like, when people get married, we should invite them because we went to their wedding, and then we should have them there because they're family friends of my uncle's third cousin or whatever. So it's kind of the barbecue and the wedding. I kind of use those analogies as examples a lot of the time because I know I can relate to that, but I know many people can, is when you have a event planned with some friends, whether it's a food or drink or whatever, there are moments where you don't want to go, and I want you to listen to that. But most people just completely bypass that, their needs. I'll just get over it. I'll get there. Normally I have a good time when I'm there. There's so many kind of red flags in that to kind of that you and I could pick apart. But the main thing is when people hear boundaries, they go, oh, that even sounds too hard. Where would I start? And I think one of the places is just when we talk about boundaries, is listening to your body and how you feel around people, but just the word no. And it's a practice. It's going to feel really uncomfortable. And in the beginning, most people, you will have to give a reason why. It's very rare that anyone in this beginning stage can go, I just don't feel like it, because it's tied to validation, self-worth, acceptance from people. We want to be liked by everyone. God, for goodness forbid if we have someone that doesn't like us. So we want everyone to like us. So a lot of the time it's like when we say no, or, oh, we're busy that weekend, it could even just be, oh, thank you so much. I'll think about it. Don't have to say yes straight away. I'll think about it. Or let me check my calendar. Or if you want to say no, it's like, you can say no, but you can give a bit of an excuse. But what you want to practice to is to be able to confidently say around the people that genuinely love you, love is unconditional. Relationships should be unconditional. You should be able to go, no, I just don't feel like it. Why? I just need some time alone this weekend. Or you just say no, and that's it.
And that's enough.
It's more than enough, isn't it? And then the other person should go, cool. Oh, that's a shame. I'm going to really miss you. Anyway, did you catch the game the weekend? Like, it's not a big deal.
Well, it's not a big deal when you're setting a boundary with another boundary setter. Right. But when you're trying to set boundaries and other people around you are not accepting of that, they've never heard of it. They don't think that, they're allowed to set them themselves, or whatever the reason is, it is immediate resistance. And so when you were saying before that their self-talk is, oh, this is too hard, I don't even know where to start. I validate that. It's 100% true. It is hard. It's one of the hardest skill sets I've ever put in my life and that I've ever taught, because it's lifelong. You never understand all of it. It's like the more you understand boundaries, the more you're realizing they literally are in everything.
Yeah. So how would you start someone that is listening to this now and saying, I just feel like I live my life for everyone else, not for myself? I think that's where it starts too. You just feel exhausted because you're doing everything on other people's times, not your time. You don't know who you are anymore. where could be a good place for someone to start with a boundary in place? Is it saying no, or is there something else that we could be doing?
Well, as I said, it's so complicated. It is one of my favorite subjects, though. So this gets me rather excited because I know what's on the other side of it. I know that people have so much victory and so much freedom and peace in their lives when they even have one successful boundary. But what I tell people is the best place to start is something that is very benign. Do not start with that one thing in your life that you're thinking, oh my gosh, this relationship is so toxic, or it's just so complicated and I just don't feel right in it. Don't start with that one. I mean, unless safety is an issue, and that's a whole nother conversation. But start with something like the barbecue. Like that's a great scenario. It is, I know it's a different season where you are right now, Barbara, but for us, the 4th of July is next week. And lots of people are having different events that are going on. And so we have had conversations like that. You think that you're supposed to because that's tradition and that your family always goes to see fireworks or that you're always doing these things. Okay, great. That's great that they do that. But if you feel like you need to have time by yourself, maybe you just started a brand new medication, or maybe you've got this really big project going on, or maybe you just have had a lot of time with your kids. And as much as you love them, you really need to just have some time in your own thoughts. Start with something like that. And I love doing like boundary role plays with my patients. That is where I've seen them have so much success, is we're doing it in real time. And I'm pretending to be the person that they're trying to set that boundary with. And I make it really difficult at first to show them that at any time we can time out. Anytime we can say, oh, I didn't like the way that went. Oh, I don't know that she would say that. And we're like, okay, let's redo this. How do you think that would go? But the point is that it's creating this muscle memory up here that tells them, I've done this. I can do it again. This will not be the first time I'm ever going to have this conversation. So you've just got to start with the things that seem like it's the low-hanging fruit. It's something that I can do. And then it helps so much to practice that. Because if you don't, you feel like you're going to fumble over your words and you're just getting super anxious and you're sweating and all of these things are going on because you're anticipating it going so poorly. But if you realize I've done this before and it wasn't that bad, you can try it. But you also have to realize most of the time you are going to be met with resistance. And it's just like a radical acceptance that we have to have. Most people, unless they're really training themselves in boundaries, they're going to put up kind of a fight because you've changed the dance steps on them and they don't like that.
It's like, I don't know what it's like over there with alcohol, but New Zealand and Australia have a very, heavy drinking culture. And if you don't drink, there's something wrong with you. So if you go to a party and everyone's drinking, hey, mate, have a wine, have a beer, have whatever. And it doesn't mean that you're not stopping drinking. You might just go to a party and be like, I actually want to look after my health today, or I'm on a health regime, or I'm on some new medication that I can't drink, or I actually just don't feel like drinking.
Right.
I can't afford it, or whatever the reasons are, you are going to get met. I think that's one of the hardest things, like peer pressure. Oh, come on, just have one. Oh, don't worry about your work deadline. You only live once. And come on. I feel like in that scenario, you've got to stand your ground. And what most people, again, when you talk about the timeout, you can walk away from someone. You can hang up the phone. You can take an hour to reply to a message. You don't need to instantly,
Right. That's pressure that we are assuming is there.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're expecting me to get back to them right away. Okay, well, they can expect that. That doesn't mean that that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You can choose things on your own terms. But there's actually a 4-step process that I have come up with as I've been teaching boundaries for easily over a decade now. And it helps people to see where the hangups really are, because sharing with somebody that you have a boundary, that's not the most challenging thing. That's not where the muscle really comes in. It's when you have to share, like what you just said, Barbara, when you share that there's going to be a consequence. When you actually tell somebody, if this happens again, or if you call me that name again, or whatever that behavior is, please don't be surprised. I'm telling you right now, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to leave the room. I'm going to do those things I'm telling you right now. That's where people have such a difficult time, is bridging from that step to actually following through and doing it.
Yeah.
You agree? Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's when you think about it, in that moment where someone will challenge you on a boundary, and like, if you call me that last name, if you call me that name again, or you do this again, we're over. And then they'll do it. And then you're like, oh, maybe I don't really want it to end. It's not, I mean, that other person knows that they can try and try again.
Yes.
And they can pretty much do anything and get away with it. So it's more like, even though you won't, let's be honest, you won't want to feel like doing it. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel icky, but it's a practice. The more you say no, the more you hold yourself accountable, because no one else is going to, the more you take care of yourself and be like, this is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to start meeting those people anymore. You're not going to be put in those situations. Once you learn to say no, once you learn to, your values and you know what's important to you, you're going to start meeting those same people that have the same values as you.
Right. It is going to be attractive. You're right. But there's so much work on, and I love this part, but I also know it can be very intimidating for people. There's so much work on you as an individual when you're the one setting the boundary, because there's so much self-talk involved in, like you said, I have to choose a consequence that I'm actually willing to follow through on. Don't just throw out there, well, this relationship's over if you ever do that again, unless you really truly know that if that happens, you're leaving and you're not going to be rethinking this. And so when I'm teaching people this, I'm encouraging, and this is, adults, and this is adults with children, telling them to think about something that you're really willing to follow through on. And so you kind of start smaller in a way. You might say, if this happens again, I'm not going to give you an audience. I'm going to leave the house, right? Leave doesn't always have to mean leave the relationship permanently. And I think that's what gives boundaries such a bad reputation, is they think that it's permanent and it's like, bricks. It's always no, it's never yes. And it's always just this awful thing. And what I'm telling people is that boundaries, when they're really done right, it's way more yes than it is no. Because what you're really saying is, here's what I will do. I'll come to your party, but I'm going to bring my own car so that I can leave when I feel like I'm ready to go. If you're telling your spouse that, right? I'll go to your parents' house. I love them. They're wonderful. I'm just not feeling my best. So we're going to have to take 2 cars. I'll come back, right? So it's a yes, but it's a boundary. And you want people to hear more of the yes than no. Honestly, that you really do. You want people to hear that what you're, unless it's a crisis situation or a safety concern, you want people to hear that what you are saying is, I'm reasonable, but I'm just thinking about myself in this scenario as well as you. I'm not just thinking of me, but I'm thinking of me too. And so I'm willing to do this, but this is how this is going to look. Or like, I'm willing to be in this relationship, but I need to tell you how people are in a relationship with me. I don't talk to myself that way, and I don't let other people talk to me that way. So if we're going to have this relationship, and you might be saying that to mom or dad or someone that you're, supposed to be very close with, you're saying, other people do not communicate with me like that. And so I'm just simply asking that you do the very same thing that I'm doing with everybody else in my life. And if you don't, there's going to be some distance. And I would be willing to do that, right? I'm willing to not call every single day. I'm willing to maybe not go over for Thanksgiving and Christmas and every single holiday. So there has to be some flexibility in that, which takes a lot of creativity and practice, but it also builds so much self-esteem.
And the byproduct is you get to live your life on your terms and your way. You stop saying, you feel fulfilled because
Which
you're
is
making
what makes you like yourself.
Yeah, you're making decisions and doing things, and it can be the simplest things. Where do you want to go for dinner tonight? What restaurant? Oh, I don't know. It gives you the confidence to go, actually, I want to go to this new Italian place, or I want to go to this place. And you're not concerned. Yes, you love the other person, but you're your voice is getting stronger. You're like, I actually know
Yes.
what I want and I will do this. So it's beautiful because it's almost like you take your power back. And it's not I don't know why boundaries has such a negative, I don't know, relationship. Like anyone that you talk to anyone about boundaries, everyone's like, oh God, boundaries. Like it's hard work. People that do it are really bossy or really mean. And it comes,
Right.
yeah, I just think the way you've beautifully described today what boundaries are and that it's a positive thing and it can be a really nice thing. How
Right.
powerful is that?
Well, and another thing I tell people often is that when you are taking boundaries seriously and really trying to bring them into your life, every relationship has the potential to get better. Even the ones that you're not necessarily working on. It's just the way that now you function within the relationship is like the example you gave about dinner, such a great one, because maybe you're the one that's used to always in your mind thinking that you have to let everybody else go first. You're the
Yeah.
nice person, and so you always have to say, well, whatever you want, whatever you want. And it sounds nice, but what's happening on the inside is you're building resentment. You're building so much resentment of, oh, we always do what he wants. We always do that. Well, okay, but you're the result of that. Like you could change that if you decided that you wanted to, because boundaries have this bad um, uh, opinion or feedback from others is because so many people that think they're doing that are more aggressive than assertive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not setting boundaries. That's just being mean and being a narcissist at times. And it's being very conceited. But being assertive is saying, you know what? I think about you and I think about me. And I really want this to work out for both of us. It's just no longer going to mean that this is going to always default to you.
Mm.
And people that love you and really support you are going to hear that, even if they don't get it.
Mm.
But the ones that are like, oh, this is really not in my favor. This is really mixing things up for me. You're going to see their true colors and you're going to have some decisions to make.
And that's a hard thing. That's yeah, but it's honestly so worth it. And it's I think we've described that really well. As we move on to the parenting side, what's one tip that we can give to a parent listening to this of how boundaries can help being a parent?
Don't give up. Don't give up. I mean, before when you and I were chatting before we started this, I told you that I have 3 children. I actually have 4 because I have a stepdaughter who's 24. And so I have all these age groups represented. I have a 24-year-old stepdaughter, a 16-year-old son, a 12-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old son. And so I've, across the board. And I don't do this perfectly, but I absolutely know that this is what works, that this is what makes things better, is that they know what to expect. They know that they have a yard that they can metaphorically play in. If you're saying, this is as far as this gets to go. This is when you get to do this activity. This is when you have to be home. This is as long as you're going to get to be on your phone. Are they going to think that you're mean?
Yeah.
Of course. I get called mean all the time. But I just smile and say, you're welcome, because I'm doing you a favor. I am teaching you how to be accountable and to be responsible. And hopefully they're going to take that into their lives. But don't give up, because it's very difficult. Kids don't understand. This is a brand new, if you think it's a new skill set for you, it's brand new for them. And so when they realize they're not getting their needs met the way that they think they're supposed to, they're going to put forth all sorts of fight and complaining and all of that. But if you can be confident and say, this is a long game. I'm doing this because I know what's coming, and I know that they're going to be more responsible, have better self-control. Keep at it, but do the things you can to actually learn how to set boundaries properly. This does not come natural. So anyone who is listening, please do not think that because Barbara and I are explaining this, we have a lot of years of reading and trial and error. This is not something that comes natural. You need to know the methodology and how is this supposed to look? What does it mean to set a boundary and to be consistent in doing that?
Consistent, but also it's different when it's your family and